because she's doing a plea deal. So.
No, we'll cover that, man. But thank you. Thank God. Every other Thursday, back with Billy Ferguson, Jeff Robertson Show. Back with Billy Ferguson, business, leadership, and lessons learned. Billy, we've had a lot going on. We were talking about it, folks, as we were opening up here. We were talking about our rescue squad EMS days, and I was asking Billy. One of the things that I was going to tell you this other part, I was all right. So I want to tell everybody what we was talking about. We were talking about when you had the opportunity to actually bring that person back to life. So if you're tuning in and you've had this experience, comment up here for us. So because I'd like to hear your story. But we were talking about, have you ever had the opportunity that when you save someone who is literally shockable, like you see on TV, or they're flatlined, they've left here, and you bring them back, and you and I together, it's a small number for me, Billy, but me and you shared one of mine. I don't know if you remember. I think we talked about it on an episode. Me and you was working in the emergency room together, and that one. That one was as close to the guy. Just basically, we got him in the bed and put the leads on him, and you were like, "Robinson," you yell at me like, "Robinson, freaking put the damn leads on, right, whatever." And you're like, "Hey, check that lead over there," and I'm like, I'm pressing, and I go, "Yeah, Billy, he's it's on," and you turned, and looked at him, and you went, "Oh, dude." And he was like, "He's going, Robertson." And one of the first thing you do, and we talked about this. I know we don't have to talk about it no more. Is you pop them, is you do that crap. What's
Used to be the precordial thumb.
Yeah, precordial thumb. I don't know if you do that anymore or not.
No, not at all. But that's one of the first things you used to do, right? Yeah.
Yeah, used to precordial thumb. So you popped him, and I was grabbing the paddle. So anyway, shocked him back. And I remember asking that guy, like, so I was like, "Hey, look at me, like, stay with me, stay with me, stay with me. What'd you see? What'd you see? Tell me what you saw." And so that's what we were talking about, folks, as we were warming up. So I'd asked Billy this week, like, "Hey, did you ever have any moments to where you or someone that you had saved or brought back, or whatever words you want to put in there, to where they had talked with or whatever?" I'm just like Billy. I've got a couple things that's happened, but nothing in EMS. And I wanted to tell you, I was saving it for the show. When back when I was whatever, like 12, 13 years old, Billy, my grandmother passed away. All right. So I'm at my family store, and my grandmother lived next house down. And I was gonna go have lunch with her. And me and my mom had this little tiff. And we were in my mom's store. It's June like 13th, so it's hot. And my aunt had came in, and we're standing there. Me and my aunt's on this side of the counter, my mom's over there, and we just all just like shooting the breeze. And my aunt, we're gonna go have lunch with my grandmother. Dude, the front door on the store, it was the pneumatic, same ones you have now, where you pull on the door and it's got the little pneumatic handle. So it's not like a storm door to where it open it up, right? It took something to open this up. So the wind opened this door, and this big gust came through. It was like shh, and it was enough to where you felt this wind. And it went by me. And in the back of the store, we used to have this attic fan. You know, the attic fans, wow. And the attic fan, Billy, was like this and go, wow, 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 wow. I had that, I'll clip that out for everybody so you can hear my wow, 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 wow. But it was super loud in the summer, annoying. And that wind hit that fan and stopped it.
Wow.
Like, and my mom goes, my bird just come out. I was like, I didn't see no bird. Like, where's the bird? My mom goes, it's a bird. So nobody knew what happened. Fan goes back. So I walked down and found my grandmother dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I never, but I had that. I've shared a couple others with you, and I'll build off those and level of comfort that I am to share them. But that one I tell a lot because it was such it was moving, but it was one of the first times when I had that. And then when I go into public safety, like, you're around that a lot more. You know, our friend Johnny Ray, and he had Arrington Bussey, right? We were around a lot of life and death, and I was I probably had some other moments and different things, but that's one of the ones that I had. But I never had anybody on that scene at the dealership, Billy. I'm gonna tell you this one is I had met a fella that had been struck by lightning, and he had told me, after we got done, he was just very stoic in his pray, like, and he just didn't like, me. I try to make everybody laugh or until I get on your nerves and you get mad at me and walk out. And I picked with him a little bit, and he went with emotions, and I had got him hooked up, and he went to shake my hand, and he was like, "Hey, I just want to tell you something." And he was very stoic, and he was like, "Hey, I want to tell you something." And when we shook hands, he was as cold. It was like I was shaking hands with a block of ice. And he shook my hand. He goes, "I just want to tell you, I got struck by lightning." And when he did that, I grabbed, we tucked like a little tighter on that grip,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh, I could feel it." I mean, it was a really just talking to him, and he had been struck by lightning. And what he had told me was it took his ability to show emotion.
Wow, that's crazy. On something like that. Um, I guess it damaged that part of the brain
Yeah,
that elicits emotion and everything. So yeah,
I,
that is
I like I
crazy.
think so too, right? I was thinking the same things, or just how that process through. But I'm very lucky to be alive. But so it got me thinking this week. Here we are every 2 weeks. We go through some public. Our goal here is business, leaderships, and lessons learned. And I was like, man, we haven't. There's some really cool things that we got to do, being firsthand, and there's a lot of honor in holding someone's hand as they pass on. I think you're absolutely chosen for that moment, to be able to live in that with someone. And in Franklin County, the how we treat our and honor and respect through law enforcement, how we escort funerals, and it's a bigger deal. So we pay a lot of attention um, to our fallen in Franklin, but just being on the front side of that. But then, like I was messing, I was like, I wonder if Billy ever had anyone have that near death experience, to where they experience something in the beyond or what have you. So that's where that all came from, Billy. Was just to switch gears a little bit. Um, but on the business side of things, here's something that I saw, and I did a little research. Um, I was paying attention to um, a couple businesses, and I was just looking up to see what we could chat about, and it got into branding and marketing, and then I got into looking at Cracker Barrel, and Cracker Barrel is on the negative side of attention for their logo change, and uh, their some of their they redesigned their logo, took the barrels and the man off of it, and now it's just a generic belt buckle looking um, of a logo. And I think what I was going to tell you, and from a business standpoint, because this is something you're working on, is your branding and your logo, and when you look at what that previous logo obviously meant to so many. Um, and then how you end up having to rebrand and the repercussions of that. But it got me thinking, similar to tetanus shots. Billy, from 2000, I didn't go back any further than 2000, but from 2000 until now, and I've got two versions of this, from 2000 to 2019, and then from 2020 until now. How from 2000 to 2019, how many major brands rebranded and shifted their logos?
Oh my gosh, I would say that it's quite a few. I may be, you know.
From 2000, from the year 2000 to the year 2019. Are you ready?
Oh no, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. I don't think it's a lot in that time, but from 2019 on, I think it probably be tenfold of what went on.
From yeah, so that was my interest, right? Is
Yeah.
2000 to 2019, hardly any major corporate branding shifts tied to social justice before 2020. Most of the wave hit after 2020. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if you count sports teams. It gets into dozens is how it reported, just to keep it broad. But it was just a lot of rebranding that so what I wonder is the, is this because of history, or is this, sometimes your social media feed, when you research stuff, it gives you the one side. Is anybody happy that have you seen any reports that everybody's like, oh, this is the best thing Cracker Barrel's ever done? Or
No, I hadn't seen anything, but I do think, Jeff, that, and I have no facts here. I'm just speaking from personal thoughts. That a lot of this really started back maybe with the George Floyd
yeah,
incident. Is where it had, but But I think now, I don't know if you heard the last couple of days in the news that Target is having some major financial issues to the effect that they fired their CEO yesterday, I believe it was, today, or he stepped down, but I'm sure that was a forced step down. And and as that spins in your mind, and I'm not saying I'm pro or con for this, but Target was one of the first major retailers that started, with a lot of the DEI stuff, as far as the way the store was decorated up and the way they did marketing and stuff like that. So I think you're seeing some of this stuff, come full circle. I don't know if you read here just about a month ago or so. So one of the things that came up probably a couple of years ago was Aunt Jemima, which has been around forever, changed their name. They left the same decal, but they changed their name. And that family, that was a real person on that bottle, on that pancake syrup and pancake mix and stuff. So they fought that and said that was, that they didn't take this marketing of Aunt Jemima is a personal thing. And now the sales dropped so much, the company that owns it, it's now going back to Aunt Jemima.
oh, that's right.
So I think you see a lot of stuff. I think you can say the same thing with like sports team like the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, I know I've read there's a big push for that.
How much it they're swinging back to the Redskins in Virginia. Several of the high schools changed their name because it was a tribute to the Confederacy, and especially up in Northern Virginia. Now several of them has went back to the original names. So I think there was an upswell beginning with the George Floyd thing, and then you had Ferguson, Missouri, and George Floyd, and all the places, Charlottesville, and all that. And I think that was a time in history we went through, and we tend to always jump on that bandwagon. What it is knee-jerk reactions, and don't really get down into it. I just read literally an hour before we came on the show where that brings some. There had been some pride crosswalks painted in particular cities in Florida whenever they're taking all those up. So we're not, and I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just saying when I read
something, the news,
yeah.
Really, but when you take those figures off, and this is where my brain was, I know that in my day now, my logo's got an R in it. Doesn't have a, I don't see a lot of logos that are branded with a figure. And maybe it's just because we don't do things that way. And because it had my brain thinking of like, all right, well, maybe because everybody loves that retro and that bring back, and, like, is that something that may come back? But what was interesting where my brain kind of went was like, it's, we're people our people currency and our people equity matter. Like we're in the relationship and human connection and all those things. And like you said, Aunt Jemima, that was a brand in my house when I was a kid. I was connected. That was my aunt too. Um, but it seemed like we pulled those figures off, especially if it was associated with a person. And it was kind of where my brain was when I was kind of just working through it. And here's what I want to tell you. Here's another part. So when you get into the competition of attention, Kyle Petty, everybody kind of knows I'm a NASCAR guy, and not to the level that I used to be by no means, but something I still follow because it's like selling traders, man. You can't do it for 10 years and not just kind of still know all the moving pieces, and you kind of vested in the story as long as I have been. So I kind of follow it loosely. But Dale Jr. is like, the car is not good. Kyle Petty comes out and defends the car. It goes very against the message that the NASCAR's Dale Jr. He's a guy, and so Kyle. But here's what you'll find: for every opinion over here, you got to have an opinion over here, and it helps the competition of attention. It helps keep Kyle Petty and Dale Jr. both relevant. Kyle Petty knows. I know that if I go with Dale Jr., I'm just going to get lost in his story. But if I go against him, everybody's going to hear mine. So you ready? Steak and Shake with the rebuttal. Steak and Shake, who has um, who was the first to switch to beef tallow and took these stance. And so I was they popped up when I was doing this research, and there's a retweet from Steak and Shake, Fire the CEO. Thank you for your attention in this matter. The next one is they have the part of the logo, and Steak and Shake basically says, sometimes people want to change things to put their own personality on things. At CB, their goal was to delete the personality altogether, hence the elimination of the old timer from the signage. Heritage is what got Cracker Barrel this far, and now the CEO just wants to scrap it all away. At Steak and Shake, we take pride in our history, our families, and our American values. All are welcome. We never market ourselves away from the past in a cheap effort to gain the approval of trend seekers. I just thought it was interesting that Steak and Shake, who can easily just say I ain't jumping on that bandwagon, they showed up and threw some rocket fuel on the fire. So that was in the when you're looking at marketing, Billy, you'll see this sometimes with brands is they'll take the other side of the road just because it helps keep them relevant. Politics, you'll notice this a lot in politics, to where somebody just has a different opinion, and so that their way is they create their own following and stuff. So I wanted to point that out, just in the business side of this, branding and the logo, and how important it is for you to focus on your brand, and for our business owners that are coming out and getting ready to start, is your logo, your branding. All those things matter. Making sure that you're doing your research, that nothing's trademarked. I taught a little bit this week on some different things, but making sure. I had shared this with a colleague that we hope to have on the show at some point in time, who's a professor now in Ferrum, and I had shared this advice to him. It's like, hey, make sure you do your due diligence, and that nobody's using the names you want. He had a pretty cool acronym. Hopefully, he'll announce on the show on some stuff that he wanted to use, and then I was telling him, like, make that is it's that important to put that much work into it earlier on, so you don't have to go through a rebrand, years later, and have any kind of just. It's okay to do a rebrand, but sometimes if we don't do our due diligence, we're rebranding because we've stepped on a trademark, which I did on a project I was working on years ago. We didn't we there's no intention of, well, but the issue is the internet makes everything relevant now. So if you're searching for, if I had a hot dog stand in Ferrum and I was in Rocky Mount, Virginia, I could use the name of the hot dog place in California. Nobody cared because Yellow Pages didn't create any habit. Now with the internet, if you're searching, it's the same businesses, same type of atmosphere, it can create some issues. So I just want to bring that was a great way for us to segue into a little branding talk, a little branding advice for that. But just another cool story of going on. The one thing I will tell you before we wrap up on this one is
Yeah,
I
but I
was
just
curious.
want to add a
Go,
couple of topics, a
yeah,
couple
yeah,
things to that.
great.
You're saying I'm making notes, and I got two good examples of what that is. So I think with marketing and branding, you have to be very careful. And I'll talk about three real quick things here. But my background is public safety, and I was always very cautious when doing things because I had volunteers I had to work with, and I had paid staff I had to work with, and rescue or EMS has always been associated with the color blue, and fire was always associated with color red. Well, I would always make sure if we were giving out gifts, they were never blue or red. They were always green or gray or something, because if I gave out blue gifts, I was going to get hit over the head because I favored EMS over the fire department. If I gave out red gifts, I favored, that's just one example. And, same thing as we had career providers, which were paid, and we had volunteer providers. Well, in syntax and sentence structure, I never said career and volunteer. It was always volunteer and career. Volunteer always came first. So that's just one thing about marketing, more about marketing. But let me give you two examples of what you just said right there. So there was an establishment here in Rocky Mount that they probably been in business about 5 or 6 years. It was called Buddy's Barbecue. The local guy developed it, and up and about a year ago, he made an announcement that they'd been, I don't want to say charged, but they've been notified of a copyright infringement. So there's an actual chain of barbecue restaurants, and I can tell you I seen two last week. There's one at the Pinnacle in Bristol, and I seen one in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is Buddy's Barbecue. Well, they had that Buddy's Barbecue trademark. So when they found out, however it happens, like I said, through the internet or wherever, they found out in Rocky Mount, Virginia, there was a Buddy's Barbecue. So they had their corporate attorneys send a letter saying, hey, you got to cease and desist right now, or you're going to get sued. So now it's Rocky Mount Smokehouse, all because of that. So that's one example. Another example is I just read here recently. I was aware of this, but I didn't know it's being litigated in court. That and I know you go to Texas a lot, and I go to Texas a lot, and I love to go to Whataburger. And we know how Whataburger is. It's one big word, Whataburger. Well, if you put in Whataburger in your Google search bar, it's going to take you to restaurants in North Carolina. But those Whataburgers are three words: what a burger. Well, it does not match exactly right. So there was some litigation where this big Texas corporate firm that had gazillions of dollars was suing these, I don't want to say the mom and pop, but it was just 4 or 5 restaurants in North Carolina. And so they came to a recent settlement between them where that, and I don't remember how it was, but one had to pay the other one to be able to use that variation of that name. And if you Google that, you may find about it. But that's an example of what you're seeing. It's really confusing. And you can Google up. And I know you and I, when I was coming with Ferguson Safety Solutions, the first thing I wanted to use was Ferguson Ventures. Well, there was already companies out there. I probably went through 25 variations of names before you came up with Ferguson Safety Solutions. So there's ways you have to search that, and you buy that name and the like. But yeah, I get that. And marketing is really, really important. I mean, look at some of the professional singers out here. Well, I'll pick on Taylor Swift for an example. Taylor Swift is worth $1 billion and sells out the biggest concerts. But personally, I don't think she's that great a singer. I think there's plenty of people out here sing better than her, but she had the right marketing. She had the right strategy to get her there. And of course, you have to have a few breaks too. But a lot of it is your branding and your marketing, because, Jeff, if you ever went out and bought a box of cereal or a soda pop or a bag of candy just because the way it was packaged, it had cool packaging, it's had to be good. I've done that. I've done that a lot, man. I
I
mean,
bought
look
I
at
bought
that.
cereal because it had the best cartoons on the back of
Yeah,
it to read when I
absolutely.
was
You
a
had to get
kid.
that
Yeah,
Frankenberry come October, or
yeah,
Blueberry or whatever, Count Chocula, because
yeah.
the way it was packed, it could have been the same old stuff. So that is very important. And a lot of companies, and I know I'm going past my two, but did you how many you've probably been in 100 Walmarts. Did you
Yeah.
know every Walmart you go into, the milk will be in the back of the store, the very back of the store is where the milk will be. You know
Yeah,
why?
that's common in most of your grocery chains. Yeah, for
Because you
this
got to
reason.
walk through the whole
Yeah,
store to get there. So they're
yep.
hoping, oh man, I'm getting milk. Oh well, I'm
Um,
gonna grab this thing of cereal, to this thing of peanut butter. Where if I put the milk up front, you ain't never. Did you know the aisles? It's hard for two baskets to pass because they want you to stop and look at what's on the
yep.
shelf. And
Um,
those marketing
Trent,
reports they do.
insert this, Billy. Insert this. Keep going, but here's another one on that same things. Well, next time you go to buy your air filters, pay attention to where they're at.
Okay.
In the big box store, they're in the very back wall.
Yeah.
Most of them you're going to find in the very very back wall, but set for that same reason because you got to it makes you tour the store.
Yeah, and that stuff is not just put there haphazardly. Somebody has invested hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to figure out that analytics of where this stuff is at, even to the point of, is it on the bottom shelf or is it on the top shelf? Is it where it's at in the store? How it's rotating? You ever go in Walmart and this makes me so angry. I could for years and years and years I could tell you that that the soup aisle in Walmart is aisle 5. Well, I go in there one day and ain't no soup on aisle 5. It's over aisle 14 now. Well, the reason is because now I got to walk through other aisles looking for where that
Yeah,
soup is at. Walmart is notorious, and not just Walmart. Kroger does the same things.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
all,
All of them. Yeah.
but it all goes back to what you said: is marketing and branding.
To take what you said a step further, your cameras above, some of those cameras are they're trained to see where your eyes go, especially when you walk in the store. When you first walk in the store and you look up, you think, oh, it's also security cams. Most of those are tracking to see which way your eyes go, and that's your reaction is to train or trained on. And then when you go to the shelf thing in big box stores it's a good, better, best type setup. Your best is at the very top on the top shelf. Your better is eye level, and that's generally what they have the best margins in that they want you to buy. And then the good is on the bottom shelf. But those are persuasion in marketing, man, we could talk. I spend a lot of time learning. I'm working it all the times, and I'm trying to. Oh, I'm like I was a friend of mine. His son is taking a marketing class in high school, and then I told him, I was like, dude, and he's taking a psychology class. And I'm like, well, this is how they go together. I'm like, this is like the same thing with disc and personalities. I said you'll find that all that stuff meshes together.
They
That's
do,
good.
and I know you know this, but for our audience that don't know, they do the same thing with pricing. If you go in there and how many brands do you see it? It's not $3, it's $2.99. Because that $2.99 gives you that whole context. Oh man, that is a lot cheaper than this. We're not gonna pay $3 for that. We can get this $2.99. Well, that's 1 cent difference. Or you'll have something that you can buy. You get one can for $2.50, or you get 2 cans for $5. Oh well, I'm gonna get these 2 cans here. It's a lot cheaper. No, it's the same price, and even sometimes it's higher. You may get one for $2 and two for $5. Well, it's just a lot of that, and I think that's where you can mold that psychology and the marketing together. And I find myself a lot of times, my wife will say, you'll be looking at something, and maybe whatever it is 16.99. And she'll go, how much that cost? I'm like, $16.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's 1 penny from being $17.
Yeah.
So
We did at the dealership. Us as salespeople didn't like it because of the just pain in the butt. Somebody comes in and pay you cash. You got to find a freaking penny. You got to find a dollar. It's just, but we understood the concept because 21.99 wasn't $2,200. It just that has lived there forever. Like that's the concept behind that is old, true. It's been tried over and over again, and people. It's I joined a program this week, and in fact launched a program um, that I've been working on for a little group thing. I'm not quite ready to announce it yet, but $97. $97 is right. It's like a no, bro. It's not 100.
Yeah,
$97. My introductory offer at the gym, $97.
there you
Not,
go.
not, not, not $97. What I was going to tell you to cap out that part was when we look at, how that was received. I was curious. The CEO said that the feedback's overwhelmingly positive, more support than they have hate. But the one thing that caught my eye was their stock crashed. So I'm not sure if it was overwhelmingly received. It was, I think it's down 90. So CBS lost 94 million in value, suggesting up to a $200 million loss. It's somewhere between 7 and 12%. Somebody had 16.5% on the week, but somewhere at 12% of a drop. So I think the market may be reflecting the public opinion on that. Maybe I don't know.
Well, perception opinion carries a lot of weight because perception is reality.
Yeah.
What people perceive is what really becomes reality.
Yeah, now I wanted to, as we segue here, hang on a second. Well, I may not get this to play. This Mac always makes me do some crazy things, but hang on. Let me see if I can get this. I'm curious because, Billy, I don't know whether we've talked about it enough, but you have a pretty cool program that you're getting ready to roll out. It's based on media relations and how and just being able to work with the media. And one of our episodes that you and I had was I'm almost where I want to be. All right, so I'm gonna have to get out of that. I'm almost get it here. All right. So you had talked about you and I had here a while back. You and I had talked about there was the incident when we had the New Year's incident in New Orleans, and the FBI lady had been put on the spot as far as her time as an interview, and she was the spokesperson, and she was the first. She had the cameras that day, and this one I had. I don't know if I sent this to you or not, but this one caught my ear, and I want to get your take on it. So we're going to say what kind of.
You did
Did I
send
send it
me
to you?
this one. Yeah, you did it, and I had to just
All right, let me play it so everybody knows where we are, and then you must tell me if you can hear it real quick.
What does that mean?
Well, is it Tam Bond?
Do you hear it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to listen for. The DC police chief is fielding a question from a reporter off camera, and let's hit roll here.
That's what the chain of command is now?
What does that mean?
Well, is it Tam Bondi speaking to the mayor, speaking to you, or how does this work?
So the executive order is clear. The president has requested impeachment.
So, Billy, what I saw there and just reading about it was the police chief of DC was asked what the chain of command is. And her response was, "What's that?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably a clarification of, "Hey, what are you trying to ask?" I'm not sure, but here's what you and I talked about. And I'm interested in your take. I'm going to shut up because I talked the last episode. Is you are at the center of our nation's capital, and in a very like worldwide news, and you're doing a press release. This was prepared.
Right.
So what I'm curious about is your take and just how this kind of ties in with maybe some of the stuff that you're going to be talking about as your workshop and your keynote comes to life.
Well, I think that it was definitely an issue there as far as not knowing what the chain of command was, or not even. It sounded like just in that little bit that she didn't even know what a chain of command was, much less her chain of command. Now, I guess the first thing that pops in my mind is that a media ploy where that we didn't hear the whole thing, and that's just one little point we're hearing, was there's something larger there that should have been broadcast on TV, and they're just doing a dramatization or to make it like that. We don't know. We just got to take it for what we've seen. But she was either ill prepared as to be a police chief, or she was ill prepared to be the spokesperson there. In that instance, if I'd have been the decision maker there, I would have never put my chief out there as the information person. I've got somebody now that if somebody does go out there and make a faux pas there's somebody that we can recover with there. There should have been a public information officer out there, or somebody that's, a lot of these people that do public information are very good at deflecting the questions. And I think that when you go, what is that? It's like the New Orleans chief during the New Year's Eve day thing says, well, I didn't even know we had this stuff. Well, I mean, you're the chief. I mean, and maybe you didn't know, but
don't say it.
There's another way that you do things. I've learned in doing stuff with the media. And I'm doing this as from an instructor now, not trying to go some other direction. But you've always got to have an escape route. You can't get painted into a corner here. So now, if I'm out doing a press release or something, I never used the term I never used the term me. It's we, our, the department, because I got to have a way out of that if I get painted into a corner. So I think those are things you have to be aware of. And you can make a lot of these talks, with reporters. A lot of times I can go out in front of a camera and make everybody happy when I really didn't tell them anything.
Yeah.
If I've got a car accident that's 3 people's killed in, I can go out in front of that camera and say, we have a car accident. There's been injuries. The injury's been taken to here, whatever. Basically, I was taught that when I step in front of that camera, I'm only going to tell you at this point. I'm not talking 2 or 3 days after we've had a chance to dig into things, but the first couple times I'm in front of that camera, I'm only going to tell you what the public can see. I didn't tell you nothing that anybody couldn't have walked down the street and seen. I'm not going to tell you there's 2 males and a female and here's their names or whatever. Just what the public can see is what I'm going to tell you. And there's no foul in saying that, we don't have that information right now. We'll get back with you. How many times do you hear PIOs at these major shootings or something say that we don't have that information right now, or still under investigation? It's, and the press are just wanting an answer, but they're wanting a truthful answer. They're not wanting you to come out there and actually field to them. If I've got 2 tanker trucks that's run together, I'm not going to go out there and say, well, I got 2 cars or whatever's run together. But I think that's going to, I would say because of that 6 months from now, you and I'll be having a conversation, and that police chief will be in another position. Just based on, I'm not saying, terminate it, but she'll be in another position. Same thing as you and I had talked. You made a comment there about the New Orleans. You and I had a comment. We had some talks about, that there's going to be some blowback from that shooting. Well, and this may be segueing ahead of
no, go ahead.
But just this week, that the mayor came out, had been indicted on some stuff. I believe that was the mayor had been indicted on some stuff, and now I read where they're trying to plea deal out of things. So there's always some repercussions for stuff like that, and I think that's what we'll see with this person.
I don't know that the mayor, just for clarification, I don't know if the mayor, there's some kind of malfeasance of office or something along those lines, but it wasn't a direct reflection on the New Year's incidents. Let's make sure.
Right.
I don't think. The one thing Billy, the one thing that I will tell you that stood out to me, along with what you said, was like you said, hey, I'm not going to try to convince anybody that there's these two tanker trucks didn't hit. Sometimes, man, when those folks get on camera, it's like they're trying to sell you on that they're gaslighting you into like, no, this is not what you see over here. And last time I was in DC, there was daylight robbery. Me and my son and friend and his son we're caught in the middle of a daylight robbery. I had just said to the kids, I was like, hey, once we get where I knew where we were going, I'm like, hey, just stay tight with me here because crime things change when we go over this street right here. So I had been there before, and I'll tell this story sometimes. How he used to take me to sketchy neighborhoods and put me out of the car to go into the store before. You remember doing that to me when I was?
We did that all the time. Yeah.
So that's how I cut my teeth on my street on getting my street smarts was being thrust into the middle of it. But I had told the kids, dude, this is no kidding. As soon as I said, hey, we're on lime scooters, I said, hey, let's park the lime scooters, because I don't want to have to deal with this, because you got to take pictures of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'd rather walk, and I don't want to have to deal with it when we get over there. And I hear we're parking the limes. I hear a scream. Here comes this guy. He's going straight. And I was pointing at him. I'm like, watch this guy, watch this guy, watch this guy. And I'm following my son. I'm like, get over here, get over here. And I'm pointing to everybody that's with me. I'm like, get right here, get right here. And I watched him. He had purse snatched her and knocked this lady down. She's down in the middle of the street. Everybody's kind of like at a pause, and a police officer shows up and is like, hey, stop. And the guy's not listening to him. And anyway, more police got there, and they ended up getting the guy arrested, what have you. But that's broad daylight in your nation's capital. So I witnessed this firsthand, to say that I have firsthand knowledge of that. So sometimes I think when you get into those two, is that there is sometimes to where they're trying to tell you that something you obviously know. But it goes back to, so what I wanted to point out was the preparedness of having you're getting ready, you're Billy, the public safety guy, or you're the police chief of DC. Here comes that microphone, and that's something that you probably should spend a little time on an effective pause, and not feeling like you got to just answer right away. Or what kind of advice, if you had to give the chief advice as she was in her role, or you're getting ready to go to the National Police Chiefs Convention, and this is going to be something we're going to point out, what kind of advice would you give her?
Well, I think the thing about it is, and I try to even remember this on our show, that you're in control. It's not the reporter that's in control. It's you that's in control. And silence is not a bad thing on you. Don't go in there and think because of the reporter asks you a question, you've got to answer that question within 3 seconds. Stand there and digest that question. They're going to be the one, and they're going to be the one that will break the silence. If you don't have a prepared answer, but really think that through, play it through your head a couple times, and then give an answer that at least it's not going to get you in any heat. And if the answer may not be, well, I'll have to get back with you on that. I think that even if she didn't know the chain of command, a correct answer or a better answer, not the correct answer, but I think a better answer at that is, well, I'll get back with you on that, or we're still developing that policy right now. Because she was talking about Pam Bondi, and the way I understand with this, she was talking about Pam Bondi and with the militarization of Washington, D.C., with the troops coming in. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what all that was spinning out of, because there was some concern is when the National Guard went in, were they going to be in charge? Because I think President Trump had said it appointed somebody to be the police commissioner, but they were the National Guard when this young lady was the chief. Well, I think the answer there would have been, well, we're still working through those, points right now. Or I'll have to get back with you on that. But you just don't say, I don't know. Or what is that? I mean, I think that
she walked away from the microphone, gave the mic to the mayor. The mayor did, the mayor.
I think the mayor helped recover there.
Yeah.
A long time ago in my career here with the county, I had a boss one time that I think he got more angry if you ever gave him an answer. If somebody called on the phone to ask where this person was at, we were instructed to never say, I don't know where you're at. If you don't know, they're in a meeting, they're unavailable right now. Can I get them to call you back? But, I never tell them I don't know where you're at, because that's just not what you want to say. And I think she had a lot of trails she could run down at that point, because I think all of us have been out there in front of the camera and we didn't know the right answer at that time. But I think, Jeff, this goes back to the program that you and I have been working on and putting together is that that was not the time to meet those reporters for the first time. I always like to meet media and reporters. I wanted to know who they were. I wanted to, we're on a first name basis with these guys. I met them, 3 months ago. And I know that's a little bit harder to do in your major cities. But when I worked for the county, I knew if Channel 7 showed up, I even knew by shift who that reporter was going to be. If Channel 10 sent somebody in at 9 o'clock tonight, I knew who was coming. At 11 o'clock tonight, I knew who covered that night shift and who had been assigned to front, because they just don't come out there haphazardly. They have reporters that are assigned to each locality that will come out, and I think, you build that rapport up. I had the personal cell numbers, what shifts they were working, but all that was done ahead of time. And I think that was what your PIO could have that, but build those relationships. And most of the time, you will have that camaraderie there where they're not going to paint you into a corner. They're probably not going to try to catch you off guard. And in defense of this reporter, she probably wasn't trying to do that. She was probably just talking to get some clarity.
All right, so I want to know that, Billy. You teed me up for what I was going to ask you, because I feel like we could if we brought the police chief in, she'd be like, I was ambushed. She would feel differently, and that's okay, right? And I think, but you're absolutely right. Is when you are going to walk out and hey, all the reporters and all these things, and you get hit with that, why the crap you asked me, like that question, you're like, oh, what is a good way for that person who's getting ready to answer that question, and they've just been, in their opinion, they may have been blindsided, it might be a hard question or whatever. Is there a technique that we can gather before we respond?
Well, I think, Jeff, there too is that it goes back to, again, and I will give you an example here, is that you're controlling the conversation. So we opened up a fire station here about 3 years ago in Franklin County. It was a big discussions back and forth about, was volunteers going to be running out of this station? Was career staff going to be running out of this station? Was going to be a combination? And what had been said is that firefighter paramedics were going to be in that station, but the career firefighters are not going to respond fire trucks. They're always going to go in the ambulances. So a lot of people are happy that, a lot of people are not. So the day of the open house, we had this one employee who was really upset over that. So, and I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm saying his approach was wrong. So this employee was upset that that was happening. So he knew that there was going to be TV cameras and people stuff there that day. So he planted some friends at the day of this open house. So at the day of this open house, there's 100 people there, and this guy comes up and, hey, does anybody here have any questions? So this guy goes, yeah, I got a question here. How come the taxpayers have paid staff in this building and you're telling them they can't run fire trucks when they're certified firefighter paramedics? Can you explain that to me? Well, the answer is to deflect that right now. And where we moved on with that was, sir, we're here today to celebrate the opening of this building. We can get with you later on and discuss the protocols for running out of here. But right now, we're here to celebrate the opening of this building. Next question, please. And that kind of takes the sting out of that. And make later on, rather than to get blindsided and get caught on camera without getting a good answer, let's deflect that off. And we did, and it worked fine, and everything was going on down. I don't know if that answered your question, where you going.
It does. Like, just for that person who's, I think, and this is what, this goes really deep into the leadership stuff. And I've been tasked, Billy, to, I've got a couple leadership. I'm teaching leadership, speaking on leadership next week in Nashville. And then I've got a local event coming up in October here where they're calling on me. And so I've worked on some stuff, and my head has been really deep into, I've worked on some stuff here called reactive leadership versus design leadership. And basically what it does is it steals from our EMS days, our rescue days, our law enforcement days, the 911 dispatcher. You're driving down, crime happens, you respond, you react to it. And then how, as you move through investigations, get through some task force work, where a lot of, in SWAT, some of the stuff we did was more design leadership, like your pre-planning, your pilot, all the stuff that we all did, where you kind of know, decentralizing command, giving people their voices. So I'm teaching that, and then business is how we react, leadership in business. And here's where it got me going was, I'm not so sure that we haven't leapfrogged some leadership too accelerated too fast, that they didn't have time to go through that and take seriously, that, hey, that leadership class that you might have in, let's say in Officer 2, right, in the fire department class, or that you have the opportunity to understand what that role is when you're speaking to the press, because there's some dedicated classes that people go to and they take those. Yours is going to be one of them. So that's where my brain has been, is like, are we accelerating leaders too fast? And especially in our public safety side, to where we're pushing them too far ahead, and we're skipping over these important trainings that should be a prerequisite. And I go back, where I go back to that was just folks that I learned from, that were chiefs and lieutenants and sheriffs, and these folks that were really seasoned, and they had put their time in and understood their craft. And so that's where my brain has been, is are we, when you look at how a few of these folks manage that pressure moment of, did we accelerate them too fast? Should they been more in the training phase, or are they pushed to the forefront because the leadership behind them's not ready for it? The chief's got to say, listen, I'm owning this. It's my job. It's on my watch. I'm taking care of it. I don't want nobody else to have to wear this. So that's where my mind's been with it, is going back in like, I really, listen, I love teaching leadership. And the cool part for me is I talk about all the failures, man. I thought I had it all figured out. I thought why can't I do this? I equate it to, when I'm teaching young leaders, I'm like, listen, when you down here talking about how you can do this job better than everybody else, it comes with a better than everybody else amount of responsibility. And it's everybody wants to be the running back in the NFL to the 500-pound guys chasing you the same speed down the sideline, right? Then you're like, why am I doing this? So a little bit of that same mentality, Billy. It's where my brain's been on it is, are we doing a good job? Because all right, here's what I'll tell you. You've seen this to where that person, that public safety operator, police, fire, whoever, that constantly said, I don't want to get promoted. I don't want the responsibility. I don't want to get promoted. But you're like, man, you would be so good at it. Like you know what you're doing. I don't want the responsibility. And as time goes on, they end up working for someone with less experience than them, and they're mad about it. So a lot of our leadership, where there's a gap in that's what I'm wondering if we haven't missed. Is are we mentoring the right way? Are we developing leaders the right way, especially in emergency work? Business is a little different because it's not life or death. But I don't know. I was just curious to your take on that.
Well, and I'm making some notes here, and it's really funny because a couple things you said there, I had jotted the notes down before you said it. But I think the big answer to that, and I will agree with you that it happens a lot in emergency services, but I would also say that it probably happens in private businesses also. And I think that you wouldn't mind if I used you as an example, and I may be wrong,
Yeah.
so I use myself. But so I think I've made myself 4 notes here as we were going through. And I think one thing is that when I'm teaching a lot of leadership classes is a lot of people get leadership confused with managers or management. And it's
Yeah.
2 different things there. You can be a good manager and a poor leader, but you can be a great leader and a poor manager. I think in my career, and I may toot my own horn, I think I was a great manager, but I think I was a mediocre leader. Sometimes I had to, step back a little bit. I can go ahead and manage a scene very well or manage a business very well. But leadership, it's almost like you've got to want to do that. You manage because Jeff, go do this. But with leadership, I've got to have you where you'll come to me, hey man, I need to go do this, and okay, go do it. So I think is to define the difference between management and leadership. And some people are not cut out to be both. And you made a good point there is a lot of people want the leadership role because of the title that comes with it, or even the management role. I've always wanted to be X. Well, and like you said, responsibility comes with that, and liability comes with that. So when you owned the gym, you were the manager, the leader, the CEO, whatever the title may be, but you was also the fall guy when things went wrong. That you always hear that crap rolls downhill, but sooner or later it's going to get deep enough, it's going to stack back to the top. And so a lot of people don't realize that yeah, I can be the director or the CEO or whatever the title may be, but I've got all the responsibility and liability there. If I send a fireman into a fire and that guy gets killed, I'm the one that gets to go to court as the chief and tell that. And I think people don't realize that is with leadership and with management comes liability and responsibility. So I think those 2 things. I think
Billy, you hit that, and that's the part that was something I was asked because there was I had a group that I was talking with that asked me specifically to talk about like some of the leaders don't understand the liability that they accept.
Well, the Code of Virginia, and I'll speak from an immersion management standpoint. In Title 27 of the Code of Virginia, it states that on the scene of an emergency, the senior on-site fire officer is in charge. There's only a couple of differences to that. One would be an aircraft incident. One would be a terrorism incident. But the majority of the scenes, you've got a shooting. Let's just say you got a shooting, which I think we would all say is a police event. But if you've got the fire department there, and you got EMS there, and you got the police there, by the code of Virginia, the senior acting fire officer is who is in charge of that event. Now, if I'm fire chief, that sounds cool, man. I can tell everybody what to do until things go wrong.
Yeah.
And then everybody's pointing at me.
Everybody's
So
mad at me.
people don't realize that. And that kind of segues into my other ones. And I think that, let me ask you something, Jeff. I know you worked for the for law enforcement for quite a few years, and then you worked in private industry for several years. And I'm hypothesized here now, but you probably got promotions within those jobs in some form or fashion. Maybe you were a road officer and now you're a sergeant, or maybe you
Billy,
were personnel director.
here's what I'll tell you. They told me I was very responsible one time, or they told me I was very responsible often. And turns out it was all the stuff that was screwed up I was responsible
for. But right, yeah, I always heard that I'm a responsible person. Everything goes bad, I'm responsible for, which has some truth into it. But where I was going with this, let me roll back and use myself. So on May 31st of 2017, I was the division chief of operations for Franklin County Public Safety.
Yep.
When I left the office at 4:30 on May 31st of 2017, I was the division chief of Franklin County Public Safety. When I came back to work on July 1st, 2017, 8 o'clock, I'm the chief. Now, did I get any smarter in that 12-hour period? And I didn't have no mentors. I didn't have no extra training I had to go to. I just had somebody come into my office and say, hey, by the way, tomorrow you're going to be the director. And I had to learn how to be the director. You know, sure, I could still do the division chief operation stuff. I did that for 10 years. But now I'm the director. And I remember thinking when people come and ask, well, I got to go ask somebody. If they ask me something, you know, how do we issue an RFP? I don't know. I never done that. You know, go do that. So, you know, there was no mentoring in there. You know, and I will put it back in your world. And let's go back a long way for your dispatch world. When somebody in the dispatch system went to dispatch supervisor, they just got a pay bump and some more authority, but they didn't get no more training other than what they got on the job, I would say. And I think emergency services, that is big, especially in I don't want to say that, but it's a lot. It's in all across the board in every kind of job. But let's just take your volunteer organizations, Jeff. You know what it takes in most places, not everywhere, but you know what it takes in most places to be the leader of the department?
Popular.
You got to have the most friends on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
It doesn't matter the training levels. Now something more goes back to this proactive design leadership. Some of this design leadership, we say, well, you know, to be eligible, you got to have this, and this. But in a lot of organizations, you just got to have the most buddies on Tuesday night to meet, and goes through. And another thing that I was always I wanted to work on, and you kind of hit that a little bit there. I think that some people have no desire to go up in an organization. And I won't name names, but I think you'll know who I'm talking about now, that used to be a trooper that you and I used to work with a lot, interact with. And this trooper said one time, you know, I've been here 30 years and all I want to be is a trooper. I want to be a road trooper. I want to pull people over and write tickets. I want to investigate wrecks. I don't want an office job. So did this person, I think this person was always held back because of that. They couldn't, because to go up the ladder, there was hoops you had to jump through, and with each hoop became more pay, but became more responsibility. And it also maybe put you in a job you didn't want to be in. But I always thought there ought to be a horizontal advancement also. You know, if I don't want to be the president of Jeff Robertson's gym. I just want to be the guy that's the personal trainer. That's all I want to be. But, you know, maybe I do want a little more authority. Maybe I do want to make a little more of my paycheck. Maybe instead of being called a personal trainer, I want to be called a senior personal trainer or a master personal trainer. So I think it needs to be an avenue in there for people to do horizontal advancement where you stay basically doing what you're doing, but there's different tiers of that as we go through versus horizontal. I used to tell people that, my heart ever since I was in ninth grade was I want to be a paramedic ever since I was in ninth grade. I had no desire to be a firefighter, but I knew to get where I wanted to go, I had to jump through those hoops of being a firefighter. I knew I had to go. One day I wanted to be the chief, that I had to be certified as a fire marshal. So I went and took those fire marshal classes. So when that time come, I can move into that position. And I think that holds a lot of people back. And I think it may in the private sector too do the same thing. But I don't think that we do a very good job. And there's exceptions to every rule. But I think that we do not do a very good job, nor a lot of companies do a very good job on planning for, replacing that person, some succession planning. I think that, oh my God, and I give you an example here. I don't even know if you've heard this. Tuesday night, the county administrator for Franklin County, who'd been a county administrator, or had worked for the county in some capacity for 22 years, come into the board meeting and says, hey, February 1st, I'm out of here. I'm resigning February 1st. Yeah, Chris Whitlow. He resigned and he's effective February 1st. Well, and now everybody's looking like, uh-oh, what do we do? Rather than having somebody that, now there may be somebody in the organization can step into that, but there's nobody been mentored or to do that. And I will tell you that I've worked through 5 or 6 county administrators in my career, and it's just like I said, you were, assistant county administrator today, and tomorrow you administrator. Well, I mean, I don't care what position you do, when you get more authority and more responsibility and you get higher up the chain, there's certain things there you did not know. I know you worked in a trailer business a lot, but the guy that owns that trailer business could come in today and go, Jeff, I'm out of here. It's all yours. Here's the paperwork. And there's going to be things that he did that he held close to the chest that you had no idea what it was.
And I
you got to learn.
I don't think our public side should work like that. I get you on the private side. There's just some things where owners are holding on to things, but on the public side, it's hard to think that we're not that we're very to the chest on some of that stuff. It's crazy that.
It is because Jeff, knowledge is power.
Yeah,
knowledge is power. If I know this one, if I know, if I know how to do this and you don't know, that protects my job. And now you can figure it out, but you've got to come to me to do that. I know how to build this 14-foot enclosed trailer. I know what size balls go on it, but I'm the only one here knows that. I'm the only one here knows where we order those from.
You talk about Kenny. Kenny, one time, here's your funny story to go along with that. Kenny, I was running all the web stuff, and Kenny hired somebody, and as we were back in the old place before we got on our Franklin project, and we were in there, and I had we had this one button on our website that had our kind of our hot specials, and I had that button flashing. And Kenny was in there, we were all in there, and the new guy was in there. And I said, let me ask you a question, new guy. And he's like, what's that? And I said, he was talking about all the stuff he does. I said, you know how to make that button blink right there? And he said, no, I ain't got a clue. And I said, good. As long as you don't know how to do that, my job's safer in here.
That's it, and that's, there's a lot of truth into that, but that's not being that proactive leader or that design leader.
Right, exactly.
And I think you see that a lot, Jeff. I think you'd be surprised in how much you see that in government, especially
in government. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely spot on. You see it more in there because it's you're in a protector mode. The other thing I think that this is what I teach business owners, and I'd easily say this in government, is train your people. And every now and then it'll come, it's like, Jeff, if I train them, they'll leave. And I go, hey, if you don't train them, they're going to stay. Yeah. And what's that going to do for us, right? So same thing as getting your
Well, if you don't train them, they may
kinda,
leave too, because they may want to grow with the company and have a value where they may leave either way. And you need to train your people where that if I have my heart attack today, somebody don't miss a beat and can pick this job up and go right on with it. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And I think that doesn't happen more than people realize. It's just like
I didn't find. I was never in, and I probably should have, because I had got to the point to where I had some really cool roles. It took me a while to find comfort, Billy, in my knowledge and being comfortable with me. So that way, if someone come along and I made somebody mad, I wasn't, or if I fell short of something, no one was going to fire me or demote me. I was going to handle it, but I still, because of my expertise, I had someone tell me that toward the end of my law enforcement career, I was thinking about making a pretty significant change. And one of the guys had said, he goes, Jeff, you're one of the smartest guys here just because of your experience and you've been around, you've seen a lot. And I was like, well, y'all ain't never told me that. Most time, then their comebacks was very felt was most time you run in your mouth so much don't have time to tell you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're not the ones to sit around and stroke each other on the back either. So I think as far as folks like that, Billy, is if you can find comfort in your role, and sometimes owners got to make. I had a couple owners tell me that one time. They were like, Jeff, you're good. You have a place at this table. Just do what you know how to do. Keep executing on everything. Because times have gotten a little uncertain, and they were like, listen, if it all turns to crap, it's me and you, we're going to make this work. But finding comfort in your role, especially in government, can be a little harder and longer just because nobody's singing that. I've seen that a lot, Billy. Dude, I think I really appreciate tonight's conversation. We did a little business and talked about branding, and then the leadership and lessons learned side was really cool. I'm glad the way, and I really appreciate how you educated us on just some strategies when you're seeing folks that are thrust in there. And if you're a public safety operator, or you're business owner that may have some media responsibilities, make sure you pay attention to when Billy's workshop's going to be coming out. We're working on it behind. He's got a little book that's going to be going with it. I'll tease that a little bit for you.
Yeah, I got
a
that
little book that's going to be going with it. Yeah. So it's
after our last 2 weeks ago, I worked on that and got I've got the printout. I'm just working to get it into slide format now. So
cool.
I'll shoot that to you when we get off here.
We'll be back in see here. I'm going, but back so we should be good for our next recording date. I don't have any conflicts, Billy. I will be out. That is so we'll have to adjust our instead of every 2 weeks, we may have to go either next week or it'll be 3 weeks. I'm going to be in Orlando 2 Thursdays from today for that Labor Day week. I'm in Orlando for like Tuesday through Friday. So we'll have to adjust our recording date, whether we move it up a date or we skip that one. So we'll make sure we put that out to everyone. Thank you for tuning in, folks. I certainly appreciate it. I think this was a really great episode to make sure that we share, especially within our public safety community and the folks that are talking about branding or whatever. But thanks for joining us. Billy, appreciate you being here, brother. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Okay. Ferguson Safety Solutions, wferguson62 @gmail.com. is the easiest way, or you can get us through Facebook. We're there, but the easiest way is to email us or call us, 540-393-1703, or email at wferguson62 @gmail.com. And Jeff, you disappoint me tonight for a minute. I always had some good news wrote down because you always ask me.
Oh, hang on, hold on. If you got good news, make sure we share it. Throw it on.
Actually, well, and I sent you a little bit of this, but the last time we did our session, the next day, we had a very robust program that put on for one of our organizations in a couple of counties close by here. And we did about a 2-hour program in the morning on bloodborne pathogens. And then we broke for lunch, and then we come back and we did a 2-hour presentation on surviving the active shooter, which is probably one of the best I'd ever seen. And I know we'll have that gentleman on here maybe in a couple of weeks. I know he's eager to get on, and I know you've talked to him too. But we had the, I guess you'd call it I call it the theater room at one of the local facilities here. And we had about 82 people in that class. And we had very positive feedback. As a matter of fact, we've got a couple more classes out to do that they want us to do again. We did had surveys taken at the end. It was very positive, but very, very positive, and a packed house, which was really, really great. And so anytime you're needing any OSHA 1910 120 training, just let me know. And really, if you have a question about anything, just let me know. If we can't do it, we can find somebody that can. I had a company in Whitfield called me about a month and a half ago and wanted some classes on Arc Flash. Well, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know what Arc Flash was. But anyway, we got an electrical engineer who's going to take care of that for them. So if you have a class that you think you may need, safety related or media related, give us a call, give us an email. And if we don't know the answer, we'll call Jeff and he'll point us in the right direction.
If you give me a minute, I'll be an expert on it. You know me.
Hey man, I got your card right here. If I can get it up right there, Jeff Robertson.
Heck yeah, man.
So I've always got you laying on my desk, my friend.
I appreciate that. I got posted on my website there, jeffreyrobertson.com. I am putting together some really good content on leadership. I got a 16-hour workshop that will be plug and play. It's deliverable in 4-hour blocks, so we can scale that up or back or wherever we need to. So, and I get to layer in the cool part, Billy, with that leadership that I'm doing. Is I'm taking a lot of the keynotes that I've plugged in as well, but I get to tell a lot of the stories and just things that I enjoy talking about through my career, ups and downs, some positive leadership influences I had and some negative ones, and then some moments when I absolutely fell short, but there's some damn moments where I won big in there as well, and to help drive home those leadership messages. So I'm really excited about that.
You would have loved this class we did here the other week because, most time I'll have some people that's hiring, they go like, well, just stick to the content. We don't want a bunch of war stories. Just stick to the content. The people that's putting this show on, that was putting this class on, says, hey, this whole group loves real life scenarios. So I was in heaven from then on. It's just like I can give you some real life scenarios, and we can go through that. So I think that did make it realistic. It was relaxed. It was fantastic. It's one of the best programs we have done, and I'd like to thank Professor Matt Tatum for helping me out there on this shooter, and I'm sure Matt's probably listening tonight. So anyway, Jeff, thanks for the opportunity. One of the thousands. What's that? 1,100's watching right now. So thank you for letting us sit in tonight, and you and I work offline to get the next date set up.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. I appreciate everybody tuning in.